Have you ever felt like your home is beautiful, peaceful, even Pinterest perfect? But deep down, it just doesn't feel right? Like the walls are quiet, but your mind isn't. You walk from room to room, hoping to feel calm. But instead, you carry that same heavy breath from the kitchen, to the couch, to bed. You light candles, you open windows. You try to reset the energy with a deep clean, a new crystal, maybe even a fresh playlist. Still, the weight lingers. If that sounds familiar, it might not be you. It might be the space itself gently holding on to old patterns that block your luck and your chi. Because Feng Shui isn't just about how a room looks. It's about how it heals you back. Sometimes, the wrong mirror. The wrong reflection. A broken object you forgot about. They quietly hold stuck energy and stop your space from being the healing place it was meant to be. So in this video, we're going to explore 5 quiet Feng Shui mistakes that might be blocking your wealth, your clarity, and your energy. Not with fear, not with rules, but with the kind of gentle awareness that helps you breathe easier. If you've ever felt like your home is beautiful, but your luck still can't find you, go ahead and like this video. You're not alone. And healing can begin with one simple shift. Let's begin. Every morning, Linda walked through her front door with coffee in one hand and her purse in the other. The first thing she saw was a mirror framed in rustic wood, hanging directly across the entryway. She'd placed it there after a real estate client told her that mirrors open up small spaces. It did make the area feel bigger, but it also made her feel like something was bouncing back at her every single day. Beside the mirror was a large round clock, silver rim, ticking loud enough to feel like a second heartbeat. The clock didn't bother her at first. It was decorative. It was practical. But once she realized it reflected right into the mirror, things got strange. Linda started feeling like time was folding in on itself. She'd enter the house and instantly forget why she walked in. She'd leave for showings and feel like she'd already done it all before. Days blurred. Deals fell through. Clients loved her energy until they didn't. Money came, then disappeared just as fast. At first, she blamed the market. Then she blamed her ex. Then she blamed the heat. But in Feng Shui, the front door is where energy enters your life, your career, your relationships, your money. It's called the mouth of Qi. When you place a mirror directly across from it, you're sending energy and luck right back out. It's like inviting guests to a party and pointing them straight to the exit. Now add a clock facing that mirror and you've got a recipe for rushed energy. You're timing your own flow. You're telling the universe, hurry up and get out. And that's exactly how Linda lived. She didn't mean to. She just wanted to feel like she had control over her space. After the divorce, silence felt dangerous. Stillness made her panic. So she filled the house with movement. A mirror to reflect light. A clock to keep things moving. But all it did was speed up the leak. One weekend, her sister visited and stood in the entryway for all of 5 seconds before saying, "Linda, this house feels like a checkout line at CVS." It made her laugh. But it also stung. That night, Linda lit a candle in the living room. She sat with her tea and just stared into the hallway. For once, she didn't scroll Zillow or answer work texts. She just watched how the mirror reflected the door, how the clock ticked into the glass. She felt it, the loop, the exit, the rush. Later that week, she asked a barista she liked at the cafe nearby who happened to study Feng Shui on the side about the setup. The girl said something that stopped Linda cold. "When your space mirrors urgency, you'll live in urgency, even when nothing's chasing you." So Linda made the smallest change. She took the clock down first. She put it in the closet. Then she covered the mirror with a scarf she got from Sedona. She waited. 2 days. No change. 3 days. Still nothing. But on the 4th day, something happened. She came home from a showing and exhaled. Not a sigh, not exhaustion. Just a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding since her husband left 2 years ago. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She just stood there, hand on the doorknob, and said, "I don't want to chase anymore." Now, the mirror lives in the hallway, where it catches soft light but no doorways. The clock? She donated it to a thrift store that supports single moms. In the mirror's place, she hung a piece of art, an abstract swirl of soft gold and sky blue. No ticking, no bouncing, no loop. Just presence. And every morning, when Linda walks in with coffee in one hand and her purse in the other, she sees herself. Not reflected. Just arriving. She still shows homes for a living. But now, her own space feels like one she'd actually recommend. And the barista? She gave her a plant as a thank you. They still don't know what kind. But it's thriving. Tom didn't believe in energy. He believed in engines. In tires with the right pressure. In coffee that stayed hot on the road. But energy? That was his wife's thing. When they moved into their little home in Idaho, she bought a set of wind chimes from a local art fair. Copper tubes, hand-tuned, with a blue glass bead in the center. "Good for luck," she said. Tom nodded and hung them up, right on the back porch. It was the quietest corner of the house, barely any wind. They never made a sound. Every morning, Tom would sit in that back porch chair, sipping his black coffee, watching the mountain in the distance. He liked the silence. But sometimes, it felt too still. Like the air wasn't breathing. Like even the birds didn't know what to do with that corner. He never thought about the wind chimes. Until the money got tight. Pension was steady, but the truck he was fixing to resell kept breaking down. His wife's online shop had orders but no reviews. And that blue glass bead on the chime? It cracked. He didn't notice when. He just saw it one morning and said nothing. But the stillness started feeling heavier. In Feng Shui, wind chimes are used to move energy. They awaken stuck qi, break up heavy corners, and redirect flow into areas that need life. But when they're placed in a dead zone where no air circulates, they become more than decoration. They become a symbol of silence. And in Feng Shui, silence in the wrong place equals stagnation. That back corner of Tom's house was a textbook energy block. Too quiet, too unused. Even the soil beneath it was dry and cracked. And that's the thing, Feng Shui isn't about stuff. It's about motion. And when something meant to move energy just hangs, still and ignored, it doesn't just lose its power. It holds the stuckness in place. Tom wasn't the type to Google Feng Shui. But one day, he overheard his wife talking on the phone to her sister. She said, "It's like this house wants to help us, but that corner keeps swallowing everything." Tom didn't say anything. But the next morning, he stood on the porch with his coffee, looked up at the chimes, and finally heard nothing. And it hit him. The chimes weren't broken. They were waiting. He didn't tell his wife. He just moved them. He took down the chimes from the back porch and walked around the house. When he reached the front, he felt it wind. A soft, mountain kind of wind. Not loud, not showy, but present. He hung the chimes right by the front garden, next to the lavender she planted last spring. That night, they heard the sound. A gentle, low tone, like a sigh that finally exhaled. And for the first time in weeks, Tom felt the corner lift. A few days later, the truck turned on without a fight. His wife's store got 2 glowing reviews from customers in Oregon. And the blue bead? They replaced it with one made of green sea glass for renewal, she said. Now, every morning, Tom sits on the front porch. Same coffee. Same mountain. Different wind. And when the chimes move, he says, that's luck showing up with boots on. He still doesn't believe in energy, but he believes in listening, especially when the wind finally decides to speak. It had been there for months. A ceramic bowl off white floral edges cracked clean down the middle. It used to sit on the kitchen island filled with oranges and lemons. Now it just sat, empty, split, unmoving. Carmen passed it every day. Coffee in hand, lunch bag in the other, chasing her daughter out the door. The bowl wasn't urgent. It wasn't dangerous. It was just broken. But it stayed. She meant to throw it out after it cracked. But that morning, the dishwasher broke too. Then her daughter caught the flu. Then school got messy. Then the gas bill spiked. And somehow, the bowl became part of the background, like a tired piece of furniture, or a rug stain no one talked about. In Feng Shui, the center of the home is sacred. It's the heart, your home's energy core. A broken object in that space sends a loud message. This house is holding on to something fractured. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about the chi, the flow, the emotional pulse of the space. When Carmen finally noticed, it wasn't because of the bowl. It was because she kept misplacing things: keys, lesson plans, time. She felt forgetful, disconnected, and oddly, a little angry, for no clear reason. She started snapping at her daughter over crumbs, arguing with her husband about groceries. The house was clean. The bills were paid. But something in the air felt splintered. She didn't say anything until her friend from work came over for coffee. The friend walked in, stopped in the kitchen, and said, "You know broken things keep broken energy, right?" Then she sipped her coffee like she hadn't just dropped a wisdom bomb. Carmen laughed it off. But that sentence echoed all week. That bowl sat at the exact center of the house, right where the kitchen, living room, and hallway met. Right where the family moved the most. Where conversations happened. Where backpacks landed. Where Carmen stood to take her first deep breath after work. And it was cracked. Not just a little chip. A full line, like the house was keeping score of something that had split long ago. She started thinking about how, since it broke, money had felt tight. Her patience had shortened. Her sleep got lighter. It wasn't superstition. It was weight. And the bowl held it. She didn't Google it. Didn't read a blog. She just remembered something her abuela used to say. Mend what matters. Let go of what breaks open. So that Saturday, while her daughter played outside, Carmen picked up the bowl. She didn't throw it. She didn't cry. She just held it, looked at the crack, said thank you, and walked it to the trash. Then she cleaned the kitchen island, wiped every corner, put down a woven mat, and placed a new wooden fruit tray, this one from her sister's wedding gift basket. It wasn't fancy, but it was whole. That night, her daughter came in and said, "Mommy, the kitchen feels brighter." Carmen didn't say anything, just smiled. And later, as she lit a small tea light on the counter, she whispered, "I feel lighter too." Since then, they've had fewer fights. The fridge somehow stays full longer. And Carmen finds herself breathing deeper. Not because of magic, but because her home no longer holds a fracture. Sometimes healing doesn't start with meditation or incense. Sometimes it starts with throwing out a broken bowl. By the way, if this kind of slow, quiet shift feels like something your space needs too, feel free to subscribe. We explore gentle feng shui fixes like this every week. Your home doesn't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, it just needs you to notice. Daryl used to love the feeling of coming home. The sound of keys unlocking the door. The little click that said, "You made it." But lately, that moment felt flat. He'd walk through the door, past the hallway, and into the kitchen. Same shoes, same keys, same steps. But the warmth was missing. At first, he thought it was just work stress. He ran a small barber shop in town. Business was okay, regulars came, but tips were down. He blamed the economy, the weather, maybe even his playlist. But something deeper kept tugging. The front hallway of his house. The first space you see when you walk in. Had no light. One dim bulb overhead. No window, no mirror. Just a narrow stretch of quiet. And over time, that stretch started to feel like a tunnel. Not in a poetic way, in a draining way. In feng shui, the entryway is more than just a passage. It's your mouth of qi. The first breath your home takes when you arrive. If it's blocked, dark, or ignored, your whole space starts on a whisper. And not the calming kind. Daryl didn't know this. He just knew he felt tired. Like energy never made it past that hallway. He told his wife one night, "This house feels like it forgets me when I walk in." She raised an eyebrow. "It's a hallway, babe." But he couldn't shake it. He started noticing little things. The shop getting fewer walk-ins. The bills stacking up just a bit higher. And his own mood low, dragging, like every step cost more than it should. One Saturday, a customer came in for a fade and mentioned her aunt did feng shui. "She says dark hallways block your blessings," she laughed. "Like, literally, the light can't find you." That stuck with Daryl. He went home, opened the door, and stood there. Just stood. In that dim entryway, for the first time, like he was the guest. He saw the dust in the corners. The broken umbrella by the wall. The dead light bulb that hadn't been changed in weeks. He realized, I walk through this every day and expect my life to shine? The next day, he made a trip to Home Depot. Got a brighter bulb. A small wall sconce. A bamboo mat. And an impulsy round mirror with a copper frame. That night, he installed it all. The moment he flipped the switch, the hallway didn't just brighten. It lifted. He placed a bowl of oranges on a corner table. Put on Miles Davis. And for once, when he walked in, he smiled. He didn't do it for feng shui. He did it because the space finally felt like it saw him. A week later, the barbershop had its best tip day in months. A client he hadn't seen in a year booked a full shave. And his wife? She said the house finally smelled like him again. Healing doesn't always come from sage or sound bowls. Sometimes, it comes from turning on the light where you forgot to. Now, every morning when Daryl leaves, he taps the mirror. A tiny ritual. No candles, no mantras. Just acknowledgement. And every evening, when he steps back through that door, he says, "Let's light this place up." The hallway closet in Cheryl's home had a creak. Not the loud kind. Just enough to sound like a whisper every time she opened it. She called it the ghost hinge. Behind the door, stacked like Tetris blocks, was everything she might need someday. Old holiday decorations, a folding chair with one loose screw, a half-deflated yoga ball. and a pile of unopened mail from last fall shoved into a tote bag for sorting later. She rarely opened that closet. She just walked past it. Every day. The door stayed shut. But something about it made her feel stuck. In Feng Shui, we think of clutter as mess. But it's not always visual. It's about pressure. And when you stuff energy behind doors, especially in walkways or corners, it creates what we call a clutter trap. Not just a physical block, but an emotional one. A place where things you can't deal with get stored. And that storage leaks. Cheryl didn't think about the closet much. Until her energy started to drain. She was sleeping more, doing less, skipping breakfast, blaming retirement fatigue. One morning, she tried meditating. She lit a candle, played her forest sound playlist, sat on her couch, and couldn't stop thinking about the damn closet. She opened her eyes, stared at the hallway, and felt her breath tighten. So she got up, walked over, opened the door. The ghost hinge creaked. And there it was, pressure. Not from what she saw, but from what she felt. Unfinished business. Feng Shui teaches that doors are pathways of qi. They represent movement, transition, flow. When you block what's behind them, or use that space to bury overwhelm, you don't just pause energy, you suffocate it. And Cheryl had been doing that for years. She remembered a story from one of her patients years ago. A young man in recovery who used to say, "I keep my grief in boxes. Problem is, I forget which ones I sealed." Back then, she nodded with compassion. Now, she understood it in her bones. Behind her closet door was a life she hadn't sorted. And every day she passed it, her house whispered, "We're still holding this." She didn't clean it out that day. She just sat on the floor, picked up the tote bag, opened the first envelope. It was a dental appointment reminder from 2021. She laughed. Then she cried. Soft, quiet. Not from sadness. From permission. She didn't need to fix it all. She just needed to open the door. Over the next few days, Cheryl took one item out at a time. Donated what she could. Tossed what no longer fit. Recycled the paper. And wrote a sticky note. Clearing is caring. She stuck it on the inside of the door. So when she opened it now, it smiled back. And something strange happened. She started waking up earlier. The house felt lighter. She even began sketching again, something she hadn't done since her husband passed. One afternoon, her neighbor dropped by and said, "Your place feels different. Did you paint?" Cheryl said, "Nope, just opened a door I'd been ignoring." Now, every time she hears the ghost hinge creak, she grins. The closet isn't perfect, but it breathes. So does she. Because in Feng Shui, energy doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs space to move. Some changes are loud. They involve paint buckets, heavy lifting, and weekend plans. But others, they begin with a whisper. A cracked bowl. A mirror in the wrong place. A hallway that finally gets a little light. Or the soft courage it takes to open the one closet door you keep walking past. None of these shifts are dramatic. But together they add up to something real. A home that feels like it's breathing with you again. A space that welcomes you back instead of weighing you down. Because Feng Shui doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks you to notice. And to care gently, consistently, and without shame. Your home doesn't always tell you what's wrong. Sometimes it just slows you down. You forget your keys. You lose track of time. You sigh a little too much in the hallway. And you think, maybe it's just me. But it's not just you. It's your space, gently mirroring what you've been carrying. And when you shift even one thing, move a mirror, clear a closet, let the light in, your home shifts with you. That's the quiet power of Feng Shui. It's not magic. It's not mystic. It's a kind of listening. So if something in this video resonated, if you found yourself nodding or smiling or whispering, I do that too. Go ahead and like this video. It tells the algorithm and me that this kind of gentle wisdom matters. And if you'd like more stories like these, more healing shifts that don't require big renovations, subscribe. We share new videos every single week. You can also leave a comment, tell me which moment hit home for you. Or maybe just say hi. And if you know someone who's been feeling off in their own space, share this video with them. They might not know it yet, but their home could be trying to speak. And if you're curious about what other quiet things might be blocking your luck, you might want to check out our video on 7 Feng Shui house numbers that drive in your cash and mega luck. It's part of a different playlist, but it dives into something just as sneaky and just as real. Because sometimes what needs fixing isn't always visible. Your space speaks. Wisdom listens.